All right, everybody, this is estimating level 1, the beginning. We're going to talk about the marketplace and all the little differences between each of the sectors. All right, residential, we're not going to talk too much about it because most of the uh, scopes are going to be covered in commercial. So scope is a section of work. So a specific task, put in the windows, demo windows, form concrete, put rebar in forms, place concrete, finish concrete, etc., etc., etc. That's a scope of work. So in residential and commercial, they have some overlaps. And then a little bit of difference has to do with their cost coding. So in the residential market, that's your houses and things like domestic garages, domestic sheds, decks, things like that. Landscaping, it's all domestic. That would be considered, and it can expand depending on your area. It can expand into multifamily homes. Okay. Sometimes that becomes a commercial project, but it depends. So anyway, a cost code is a numeric sequence of numbers that is assigned to a scope of work or a partial scope of work. So let's say, I'll give you an example. So let's say foundations. Foundations are concrete on the ground. Concrete can be block as well, or other similar things that are used to hold up a building, a home. So let's talk specifically about construction or concrete foundations. So a concrete foundation consists of a footing and a stem wall. The footing is the first thing that's poured. Sometimes they're poured at the same time, but let's just break it down. We're going to pour the footing first, and then we're going to pour the stem wall on it. One of the things that we do with cost codes is we like to break down the cost of the footing so we can track that. So there are 3 components of the footing. There's digging. Actually, there's more than 3 components, but I'm going to just talk these out. So you got to dig out the footing. If you have a machine dig it out, that might be underneath your civil work, and you might just have to hand dig, but you still need to put prep in there for the footing form work. All right, so you pack it down, you add rock, and you compact it. Now it's ready for forms. So cost code number 2, footing forms. Put the footing forms in. Cost code number 3, rebar. Put the rebar in. Cost code number 4, place concrete. Cast in place is what we call it. Put that in there. Cost code 5, etc. You see how that goes? So essentially that's the gist of it. So you're assigning each little step a cost code. You only do it for what you want to track. If you just want to go by lineal foot of footings and it's straightforward, and that's all you want to track, fine. You just write, you have your cost code number and you write footings. And by lineal foot, you'll figure it out over time that it costs you whatever, $4 a lineal foot to place concrete footings that are 8 inches thick, 2 feet wide, and run for how many lineal feet there is. Add some extra for corners and things like that. So, and openings. So that's what cost codes are. That's what scope is. And in general, when you're doing a new residential home, you're doing civil work. So you're digging the ground, you're getting ready for footings, you put foundations in, then you put the framing in, the floor system, if you will, depending on the type of framing that you're doing. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but you put flooring in, or excuse me, the floor framing, the wall framing, second floor framing, wall framing, roof framing, sheathing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, till it's done. So, and that's cut and paste. Do one, do the next, and you can get some pretty good data from that. There's some additional costs that would be associated with different roof styles, different materials, etc. But that's not what we're going to go into now. I just want you to be more focused on residential marketplace, domestic, single homes, sometimes duplexes, for sure duplexes, sometimes multi-family homes like quadruplexes and things like that. Occasionally, you can get into condos and stuff like that. That might fall into residential in your area. It might fall into commercial. Depends. And especially when it comes to mixed use, you got a commercial on the bottom and you got residential on the top. And so there's a little bit of play in there. If you're remodeling uh, a condo, that would be fall underneath residential. And if you're working on the commercial ground level, obviously that falls under commercial. All right. So I'm not going to go into the details on how we find out what the cost codes are. That's going to be supplied to you as an estimator because the CFO, the controller, the accountant, all those folks, they have decided what they're going to use for cost codes. They typically follow a format that is industry wide, so and very specific to that industry. So residential, they have a different format than commercial. Uh, Department of Transportation has a different format than commercial. So I'm not an expert on the DOT format. So if I have to bid on something like that, I usually call a buddy of mine and he can help me price those out. Um, I am much better at commercial, institutional, and those above. So we're going to talk about that. And that follows the CSI Master format. And we're going to go into that in great detail. So let's finish talking about the marketplace. So commercial is pretty much anything that's not government and not residential. That does break down a little bit into institutional, or so there's some other areas like institutional is college. So the monies are coming from multiple uh, pots, if you will. And industrial is pretty much its own beast, but you can use the same CSI format if everyone's in agreement on it. It depends on what the contract looks like and who and where in the world that it's at, because it can change depending on country. Heavy civil is your tunnels, your bridges, which would fall under DOT, and sometimes civil would be water treatment facilities, and some of those would fall under the CSI. So there's some of that you got to cross-reference. Again, I'm not DOT savvy. Governmental, DOT is something that's different, but for most of the governmental projects, they follow the CSI master format. And governmental can be anything from your community parks and recreation to Army Corps of Engineers, Navy, uh, federal buildings, uh, overseas, working in embassies and things like that. And then other are miscellaneous structures, and they typically follow the CSI format, but not always. Sometimes they've got some, again, it depends on where you're at. But I'm going to teach the CSI format for the master format for the most part. We're going to pretty much call it commercial to make it easy for right now in this particular video. And then we will go on and have we'll review some of the governmental projects, the specifications, how they're laid out, solicitations and invitations. I'm not going to go into great detail of government because There's just too many variations there. It depends on who you're talking with. So the majority of this focus of this program, of this whole training, is going to be based on the CSI master format. And so we're going to use commercial mostly. All right. And once you get good at that, a governmental job is just more, it's bureaucracy. So there's piles of paper on top of what you learn. So your your levels of committed monies are greater in the administrative side in governmental than they are in commercial. And obviously there's oversight from every entity you can think of in governmental. Uh, so that's about it for now. And I'm going to get set up and pull up a CSI. So hold tight. Interesting. Sorry about this, folks. Um, all right, we're back. Let's finish this second slide before I move on to the CSI format and go into details. So contract documents, we talked briefly in the other videos about this. The solicitations, requests for quotes, requests for proposals, or requests for qualifications, requests for bids, all that stuff. That's part of your solicitation. It's an invitation that's given out to the public. In a lot of cases, sometimes it's private to from a design team to a specific set of contractors called shortlisted contractors. Essentially, they've bid on a model project against a lot of people, and 3 to 5 of them are selected for major projects, and they are the only ones that are allowed to bid on those selected projects for or major projects for a duration of time. All right, so they're shortlisted, and those are the only ones that compete against each other in like government jobs. That's pretty rare on commercial jobs. In fact, I it's extremely rare in commercial jobs. So now we're looking at the notice to bidders. All right, and that just says for all bidders, it gives you a breakdown of what is expected to be delivered. It also talks about um, pre-bid conferences, which are job site conferences. Sometimes they're in the conference room, sometimes they're virtual, that type of stuff. So you get to meet everybody, like we talked about. Then the specifications. So all commercial, I shouldn't say all, but I'm going to stick with all. All commercial projects are using the CSI master format in their specifications. We're going to go into that in detail, so I'm just letting you know that's where you find it. It's broken down. Most general contractors are using the CSI numbers as their cost codes. It just makes good sense. Um, so you'll have to work with whatever your company has set up, but you're going to see some very similar numbers from your cost code book to your master format book and specifications. So it's all going to be very related. All right, other documents are the drawings, addenda, and then contract dependent requirements. So there's yeah, there might be a variety of things depending on what market that you're in for contract dependent. And you need to read those specific um, documents. So if they reference anything like they've got working in the hospital handbook for whatever hospital X is, there is a code, there's a requirement that they're referencing in the specifications. You need to grab that book and you need to learn it because it's going to tell you all sorts of things that's very specific to that hospital, you know, or prisons or things like that. So that's what that is. All right. I'm going to pause this again, and then I'm going to pull up CSI Master format, and we're going to go over it in detail. All right, we're back. So the master groups, as you can see on your screen right now, the master format groups and subgroups and divisions. This is 2018. They have a 2020 update, but this is good enough for what we're doing, just to get you an idea of what's going on. So what the master groups do is they break everything down by division. So this is the CSI master format. Division 00 is pre-construction or pre-bid work. So it's all the stuff that's required for getting everything ready to submit for requests for proposals, things like that. So your procurement and contracting requirements, introductory, you can read all this stuff. But that's that. Division 1, it's your general requirements. So Division 1, you're looking at in estimating, you're looking at what paperwork they're going to need for us to get started. It covers all sorts of stuff that's required from the management side of things. So the project manager's expectations. In the general requirements, there's typically a contract. Also in 00, there's a contract. So it's right in those, right between those. So the estimator, when they're taking a look at it, they do want to see what's in the double zeros. They want to see what's in Division 1. They need to have a good idea of how much manpower is going to be involved for admin, just to run the project without any production being done. Then you come down to the facility construction subgroup. Okay, so Division 2 is your existing conditions, which includes demolition, abatement, and other things similar to that. Division 3 is your concrete. Usually it's foundations and interior concrete. There's the other concrete, like your exterior improvements. You'll see over on the right where it says site and infrastructure subgrade. That's part of the Division 32 exterior improvements, which would have retaining walls, concrete seating, steps, concrete steps, sidewalks, that type of thing. But you could also see sidewalks under Division 3. I've seen it in both. But anyhow, that's how that's broken up. Division 4 is masonry. Those are your bricks, your blocks, and that type of stuff. Division 5 is your metals. That's your structural steel and architectural steel. That is not your metal studs. Occasionally, I have seen it in there, but it only as a reference. That is usually in Division 9. So Division 6, wood, plastics, and composites. That's mainly carpentry stuff. Division 7, thermal and moisture protection. That's your insulation, your waterproofing, etc. Building wrap. Division 8, your openings, it's your doors and windows and all the little things that go along with that. Division 9, finishes. That can be, wow, it takes on a lot of stuff. So Division 9 will have flooring in it. That's floor finishes like floor tile, carpet, and whatnot. It'll have metal studs, essentially partition construction, which is your metal studs in your drywall. It will have acoustical ceilings, which are your typical commercial ceilings where you have tile in it and a little grid going around. It will have, well, all sorts of things. So yeah, it covers quite a bit. Specialties, there's quite a bit involved in that too. Equipment, furnishings, special construction. Special construction is like sound rooms, uh, clean rooms, things like that. Conveying equipment's obvious. Going up here, special facilities services subgroup. Division 21 is your fire suppression, sprinkler systems, whatnot, plumbing, heating, as you can see down the line. That's where you find all the information on it, all the way down through. Um, Earthwork, that's outside, obviously. So earthwork would be grading, getting rid of trees, digging, all that stuff, moving earth around. Exterior improvements, like I said, those were structural improvements, very typical of what I've told you before. Utilities is putting in your services from your sewer going out to your plumbing coming in to your electrical coming in, etc. Transportation, Division 34, that covers transportation. And then Division 35, waterways and marine construction. Anything that's within, I believe, 50 feet of the high water line would be considered marine construction. There are exceptions, fixed docks where you're not exposed to the edge. Let's say it's a restaurant on top of a dock. The restaurant itself is not considered a marine construction. It can be depending on a few things, but it may not be in that division. So the next one is processing equipment. Typically, yeah, we do see this on occasion. You'll see it in the specifications. So process interconnections, material processing, etc. Just read down the line there. Those are specialty items. Very often you'll see that in industrial. All right, we're going to go into the Division 1, and this is where you can get real nitty gritty. It describes everything about that division. So general requirements, this is your project manager's instructions on how to manage the project, at least how the owner wants you to manage the project. And the restrictions there, it tells you down the line. And see these numbers here? So this is Division 1, 14, 13, okay? And so they have assigned access to site. They've assigned this number, and will always be that number. It's not going to change, and it'll always be access to site. So when your accounting folks say we're going to track all access to site as a cost to the project, then that cost code is going to be 011413. That's your cost code. And then they might attach a -L for labor, a -M for materials, -E for equipment, -O for other, whatever your accounting folks say. And so you will be working with those types of estimating sheets that have that information on it sometimes. Sometimes you got to look it up. Sometimes it depends on what company you're working with. Yeah, and so that's how you can tell. So just you'll buzz down here. I want to put the link to this. So this is from AGC, Association of General Contractors. Essentially, it's the old um, master format. The new master format is proprietary to the 2020. And what they do is they allow, once the new master format comes out, they allow the old PDFs to be released without any problems because they've got the new ones. And the new one's very good. CSI does a wonderful job. Their descriptions get better. Yeah, so highly recommend that someone in your group is a member of CSI. Builders Fluxes. So anyhow, just go down the line. So construction process documentation, what's required, keep going down the line. And this will correlate with your specifications. And now I'm going to show you some specifications and we're going to go deal with that. Okay, here we go. So I'm using Blue Beam up here. That's what you're seeing. So this is a project that is offered by the government right now through sam.gov. And here we are on page 1 of the spec. Actually, it's page 2 of the spec, but see how it's got the section. So Division 1, general requirements, talks about the summary of the project, and it's assigned cost codes to each of the titles. Division 2, so you're seeing all this right here. Division 2 is selected demolition. Division 3, concrete, and it goes through it. And so what this refers to is your cost code. This is a description of that cost code. And this table of contents is what you should expect to find in this specifications. The specification is a book of instructions that is used to build the project per the architect's design or per the owner's requirements. So essentially, if you veer away from this without permission, you're liable and responsible for a lot. Repairing it, fixing it, taking out brand new and putting in brand new other products because you didn't follow the instructions. There's all sorts of things. You have to follow the spec. So when you're doing your estimating, your spec's very important, and you use it in conjunction with the plans to make sure that you got everything covered. All right. So I'm going to go through it. We're going to go to Division General 1. They got it broken out. So these are the requirements. And a specification looks like this. So section 011000 is the summary. It goes over the documents that are in here, project information, yada, 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 your badging requirements to get on site, project information, what is this project, who's responsible for it, etc. There's also that information on the solicitation, but we are going to be looking at it here. So work covered by contract documents. It will be it'll explain all the stuff that's in here. Relocate exterior hollow metal doors, etc. Replace adjacent. So these are the big scopes of work. Okay. Move this, keep going. So, and modify some irrigation systems to make sure it happens. And then it talks about contractors' use of site and premises, talks about coordination with occupants, work restrictions, etc., etc. Okay, so we go right through that, and we are now in submittal requirements. So submittal procedures. So what a submittal is, it's a document of products or procedures, and sometimes even instructions from secondary consultants that are provided for you, that you have to provide with the information on here in the format that they say in here, so that the design team can look at what they wrote in the spec. Does this product match what they wrote in the spec? And then once they look at it, they confirm that that's exactly what they meant when they wrote the spec, and it's not and they are approving the product. They will stamp that submittal approved. And at that point, then you send it out for procurement. So procurement means then you buy whatever's on that submittal. Okay, so typical submittals are concrete mixes, rebar. They have to be in United States. Most of it has to be built or fabricated in the United States, manufactured and fabricated. It can be anything from how we just did fixtures on lights. So we sent that out to the architect. The architect says, well, yes. What ended up happening was the project submittals was a cut and paste from another project. So the lighting was not caught in a 700-page document that was upgraded and the intent. So the drawings showed one light fixture type. The specs spec'd out another light fixture type. We went with the specs, gave the submittals based on the specs. The architect looked at it and said, oh, shoot, no, we have to do a change order. So they did a change order. They did, it's called, there's a whole bunch of names for it. Doesn't matter. That that submittal is used to guarantee that the design team gets what they intended, even if there's errors in one of the documents. So it's so very valuable to send that forward and get them to approve it. Otherwise, the general contractor is responsible for it. All right. So if I said, well, those fixtures are on the drawings, I can argue it in court, we'll be fine. We've accepted the risk because of my attitude as a general contractor. We don't want to accept the risk. The risk needs to be on the design team. They designed it. If for some reason down the line there's not enough lighting in the office space and we went with the plans and not the spec, even if the spec is wrong, because we didn't go through the submittal process, we are liable for, I mean, there's an argument in court, but we're most likely going to lose because and have to replace those lights at our cost. So contracting is very, very particular. You have to follow the instructions. You have to make sure that the design team gets what they want. The design team has to make sure that the products that are spec'd match what the owner wants and is what he's expecting, he or she is expecting, and everything goes back to the manufacturer. So if everyone installs per the manufacturer's instructions, per the design team, per the owner, if there's a problem down the line in 10 years, 5 years, whatever the warranty is on that product, everyone has done what they are supposed to do, and it goes back to the manufacturer and says, okay, it's under manufacturer's warranty. Manufacturer, we did it all right. You need to come and fix it at your cost. That's how it's supposed to go. Same with structural engineers, same with everything. So that's what submittals are for. It is very vital that you look at the submittal procedures. It is not going to be, you'll build a submittal spreadsheet and you'll follow the submittal spreadsheet. So when you're getting your estimate, not in your first part of the estimate, the company has to decide they're going to go after this project. That's when you start developing your submittal requirements. And it's important to do that in estimating because then you have an idea just how much, it's not difficult to do because it's pretty much cut and paste the same stuff over and over and over again. But you want to do it so that you get used to it, you get fast at it. The more you practice it, the faster you get. So here it is. It's talking about the submittal process. Then it has to be in PDF form, yada, yada, sent to the architect, has to be approved. If it's not approved, it goes through all that nonsense, the owner's review. Okay, so there you go. And then accident prevention plans. This is your safety elements. You'll find this on every contract. Essentially, when you enter into contracting, there's an indemnification clause in the contract. And I'm just ad-libbing here. So if I'm a little off, don't get all irate in the comment section. Just chill. All right. Essentially, what's happening here is the owner wants you to have a safe project because he doesn't want any PR problems. And he doesn't want anyone hurt. He or she doesn't want anyone hurt, doesn't want to have PR issues, wants to, doesn't want a ghost hanging around the building. Not that that would be the case. I'm just saying. All right. And it's good business practice. Also, because of the indemnification. So if a person's injured on the job that we're managing, the owner's protected because of these documents and because of your insurance, your bonds, and whatnot, all the contract documents. It's saying you're supposed to have an accident prevention plan. The owner is not responsible to make sure that that accident prevention plan is up to local code, local requirements. That's you. That's your responsibility as the GC. And then you're responsible to check all the subs documents. However, in certain projects, this is an FAA project, they're going to say they want a site and health officer. They want site safety and a health officer on this project. It's a tiny project. It doesn't make sense. And that, I mean, it makes sense, but to have one dedicated to it, it's a 3-man project. And when I say man, I mean woman, I mean others. Okay, so don't get too excited about that. So now, instead of estimating a 3-man, you're going to have to estimate 3-man project manager and safety officer. So, and that safety person has to be 30 hours formal training. Sometimes you can negotiate with these folks and say, okay, our foreman is a 30-hour OSHA, and he's going to act as that, he or she. And so sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. It really depends on their oversight person and how much oversight that oversight person's getting and how much heat they've gotten in the past. It's a government, it's a bureaucracy, that's how it is. Okay, so they go through there and it keeps talking about all these things. And so as the estimator, you're going to be going through the spec and you're going to get so good at it, it won't take you that long. It really won't, because it's going to be the same type of thing. With government jobs, you know you're always going to have a health and safety. Is it a dedicated that has to be on the job? You run to this uh, section and you take a look, right? And it doesn't always have to be just you. The project manager's involved with this. The superintendent's involved with this. You have support from other people. So you can divvy out, hey, superintendent, you take a look at all the division 2s through division 10s. Okay, that's a pretty big deal. Your subs are going to give you pricing on their specific divisions that they're good at, and they're going to be looking at those specs, those sections of specs. You should still look at it. You're responsible for knowing this information, but they're the experts. So while you should be able to communicate with them, they should be able to correct your innocence of information and experience. Okay, move on. So we're going to go to Division 2 there. In this particular job, Division 2, existing conditions, they have selective demolition. Okay, this is your cost code in most cases. I'm just going to stick with that, and I'm not going to keep reiterating it. This talks about the drawings, gives you all the definitions, remove, dispatch existing conditions, expose off-site to a legal site, and all that stuff, right? All the nonsense that goes along with it. And on down the line. And this is what you'll be looking at. So that is how the CSI codes are used. That's how they create cost codes. Cost codes are assigned to each individual task and or scope and subscopes, tasks, if you will. You can do it that way as well. Call it that as well. And that's how you set up your project to estimate it. And you'll want to do that because it'll make it easier when you transition over to your budget should you win the project. And then it'll be easier and no one's going to get mad at you in accounting for using some erroneous nomenclature system. So that's you're going to be practicing with CSI a lot. All right, I'm going to go on to a drawing here. We're going to talk about the drawings. Okay. All right, here's a drawing we're going to look at. So this is a different project, also publicly available online. That's why I'm using it. Um, this is for a park. All right. This is page one. This is your cover sheet. Sometimes they've got G0.0 here, sometimes not. This is the assigned permit number or actually the signed project number. And there'll be some permit stamps and permit numbers in here as well. So you'll see all sorts of different things. Okay. That's stamped by the city for you to be able to start doing work with it. Talks about the documents. It talks who the responsible parties are throughout here. Tells you what sheets are in this, what you should be able to find in it. And it gives you some basic abbreviations. Yeah. And it gives you some site photos. Project site, where's it at, the vicinity map, etc. Okay. And some marketing on here as well. Page 2. This is existing conditions plan, as you can see right here. So it's a general plan. That's what the G stands for. Sometimes convention says that's general. I've seen it being an A even. I've seen it being LS or an L. So, but for the most part, mostly I see G for a general plan. Okay, so this essentially is give you an idea what the property looks like, the existing conditions. These are grade lines. This is where the playground structures are going to be. That's where the slab's going to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sidewalks and a volleyball court. Okay. Your job as the estimator is to take a look at that. Make sure you read all the notes. So you may be reading all these notes. This is contour interval, for example, says 1 foot plus or minus a half a foot per national mapping. Okay, so that's these black lines. Between them is 1 foot with potential error of a half a foot. All right, so it could be a half a foot or it could be 1.5 feet between these two black lines. That's how that works. And if you want to go over that in more detail, that's something you can ask me later or on a side note, or you can connect me, which is fine. Okay, and it comes down here and shows you what the existing conditions are. You can see grass here. So when you see stuff like this, where it's got dots and all this, it doesn't mean that's what it's going to look like. It's the icon that they're using. So I've seen like on carpets where they've got a tartan pattern, like a Scottish tartan pattern on it. And you're thinking, well, that's got to be the design of the carpet. No, it's not the design of the carpet. They'll send you a specific design of the carpet. That's just what they're using to differentiate it from other carpets on the drawing. So you got to be real careful not to assume that. It's really easy to assume it, so you got to be careful when you're reading these plans. And so you look at this coniferous tree, and you can go around, you can take a look. It's a concrete fire pit. Is that going to be in the way of our work? Probably not, but it's there. Do I got to protect these oak trees? Do I got to protect this Douglas fir? That's a DT tree. I think that's Douglas fir. Let me double check. Deciduous tree. Sorry about that. Not a Douglas fir. So that's what you're looking at. So you sort of get an idea. This is before you go on to the pre-bid job walk or pre-bid conference. You want to have an idea what the hell you're looking at before you even show up. and then make sure you definitely need to have some idea what the notes mean. All right. Then again, you come down here that says existing tree data, G1, so it's a general sheet as well. And it tells you what the trees are. And you look at the tree inventory, and it says maintain and protect, maintain and protect. And here it comes down, it says remove. See how it is? So you got to look at that stuff, because otherwise you're going to be like, how comes they're removing these trees and I didn't get it in my bid? Well, it's because you didn't look at the notes. So that's why you go through these notes, you look at them. I use a highlighter. So I'm using Bluebeam right now. That's the software that we're using. I use the markup tools to go through. Interesting enough, when the markup tool, I can add a note. And then what I can do is I can pull up, and everything that I've marked up comes down here, but we'll go over that more. Actually, you'll go over that more when you upload Bluebeam and put it on your 90-day free trial. You're going to get a lot of practice, and you're going to use plans like this to go through it. Okay, so nowhere on here have we seen anything, at least in this particular drawing, that has anything related to our cost codes. That's all um, that's all in the spec. Okay. And I'll explain why in a bit. And here are some more notes. So as I go through, I've got either I've got notes coming in here, because you can make notes and they'll show up down here on your list, which can be sent out to Excel, um, or um, or comma separated. I can't remember. Anyhow, it can be sent out that, and then you can use it on your Google Sheets. But make sure you look at the legends, protect these trees, approximate line access paths. Be careful on the access path. If you go veer away from the access path, you could be in trouble because of vegetation, animals that are protected, etc. You have to get permission to deviate, especially with equipment. So part of your logistics plan, your site logistics plan, is timed with construction. So when you're starting, it looks like the existing condition. 2 weeks in, you're going to have a plan that's going to show what you're stripping out, and yada, yada, yada. 3 weeks in, it shows your build back, and your logistics plan is a living document. It goes with it. And so that's part of understanding how this is going to flow. All right. Then you take a good hard look at this. So this is now what they're expecting to see, and they've added some access. All right. If you get down and dirty on this, you're seeing this is essentially going to be a concrete walkway around some trees, access out, maybe onto dirt. This is an existing playground with no work proposed, so this is not in scope. And this might be in scope, so you got to be careful and take a look. There's some stuff. Just get an idea what they're trying to get. That's what this is for. And they used an overlay of a sky photo, essentially um, Google Maps, and then they took an overlay of it. So if you look real close, that's actually a photo of a tree from the sky that is a playground set. All right. And you can come over here, you can see this tree, whatever the hell it is. There's some signs there. You can see that they've matched up pretty well with the parking lines. I mean, not too much. It's never going to be perfect because of the way Google takes their photos, the way the shadows are when it's taken. So it's going to never be perfect, but it gives you a really good idea how it lays out. Now, here's the fun stuff. General notes from uh, general expectations. So the city's general notes, blah, 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 blah. You read all this as much as you can. All right, highlight what you can so it goes into the notes. Then you talk about filter fences because they want to make sure that as you're digging, they don't want anything to go into, so they got sediment fences here, they got drainage. So every place that you have an existing playground or whatever, you have storm drains. So when the rain hits the ground, it runs off, goes into a storm drain, it goes away. It does in Washington State, all of our storm drains, a good majority of them go to salmon waters. So we have to be careful what goes into the storm drain. We're not allowed to have any construction runoff go in there. So we have to sock the drain and in many cases put a silt fence or sediment fence or some type of um, uh, product around it to make sure that no dirt, no construction runoff goes down that drain. And they're serious about it. You can get fined pretty harsh. There's some training that's also required, but you might want to add that to your estimate. That's one of those things that we can take out if we already have someone in the company that's certified to do it. That would be in the specifications too. So when it comes to, I would think in Division 1 and Division 2 is where you'd find it. I believe in Division 1 is where you'd find it, to be honest, the training requirements for that. But I could be wrong. So Division 1 or Division 2. All right, you get survey notes, demolition notes. This is important. You see demolition notes, that's when you start figuring out how much it costs. All right, start getting all the square foot, all the body counts of the root balls and everything else. Now, as a general, you're relying on your subcontractors to give you a price. So your earthwork person is going to look at these demo notes. Your demolition person is going to, or entity is going to look at these notes. Okay, your landscaper will look at these notes. And you might have the landscaper take care of all that. If it's just tree removal and it's around other to save trees, landscaper does that. If it's dirt and grubbing, taking out all that stuff with equipment, earth guys do that. If it's hardscapes, like very specific, take out this section of sidewalk, take out this chair, bike rack. It can be the dirt guys, but very often it would go into your demolition contractor. So, and you get to decide who that is. But for the most part, when you're looking at all your sub bids, you want to see if there's any overlap. If there is, you want to make sure before bid time, you want to make sure you've talked to your subs and say, I need you to extract that. You guys are overlaying each other, and then decide if who's the smarter solution for taking that down out. So you're looking at that. All right, now we're at C, civil drawing number 1. And once again, C could mean a lot of things, but it typically means civil. All right, civil drawing number 1. It goes into greater detail. Demo this tree, and it gives you C sheet, blah, blah, blah. And so you go take a look at it. You do your counts. So here we've got accounting right there. I can grab that and count trees, right? So you see it looks like that. And so it will count and it adds that down here. So there's 2. There's a whole lot to it, but I'm just giving you a quick idea what it looks like. This is the test, I think it's called test. I can't remember the way you pronounce it anymore. Anyhow, it's where you're going to put all your silt fences. It's going to show you where they want the silt fence. So this is existing playground. They want it blocked off. This looks like a fence line. Let's take a look at this. It's the wattle. Okay, so a wattle stops water and junk from going across your boundaries. So a wattle essentially is a big 8 or 9 inch wide snake, if you will, of straw in some cases here in Washington, you can also get it impregnated straw where oyster mushrooms grow out of it. So it's an edible thing. Oyster mushrooms also absorb and convert pollutants. So very often, and it's attractive. Okay, so you have a nice row of mushrooms growing. It's a little more expensive, so instead of like $5 or $10 a foot, it's like $12 a foot. It depends on what you guys want. Um, but the main thing is that you have the wattle up there, and it'll tell you all this stuff. So we'll get pricing on that. Same thing. They're showing some more. This is this area number 2. And then civil number 2. This goes into greater detail. So you still got the sky view. There's this particular one. This is also probably pulled from Google. We also have some professional services where they do flyovers with aircraft and take really detailed. I mean, you can get really detailed photos if that's something that you're trying to do for some reason. It goes over the charts and all of the information that you need to follow the rules, what the requirements are, project area, and your flow path and all that, right? So these are important things, mainly for execution, but it's good for us to know, do we have to add a drywall? So this is a full dispersion trench and down 100% downstream flow path. So we have to make sure that our subs have that in their price. So we'll call them and say, hey, you got C 2.0 in your price. And if they do, great. Then we put it in our price and add our markup and we go to town. And here we got catch basins. So you learn how to read catch basins, and the SD is storm drain. So that's an underground storm drain that connects the catch basins. And this is a dispersal trench, and it's UD underground. And here we go. We're looking at the concrete layout. So that's TW's top of wall. This is an elevation based on sea level. Bottom of wall, that's an elevation based on sea level. Okay. And that helps our forming contractor. So it also helps you determine how much concrete's in that wall, how tall that wall is and whatnot. If you had no other drawing, you could go just based on that, just simply do math. Subtract the top of the wall from the bottom of the wall, and it's a percentage. So, or it's a oh, it's not. It's in engineering terms. Gosh, I'm blowing it right now. So how we have a foot is 12 inches. In these numbers, it is based on tenths. Okay, so 379.88 is not 88 over 12. It is, or whatever. It's not a ratio based on 12. It's ratio based on tenths. It's engineers' numbers. Subtract it. We use our calculators, and our calculators are set up to look at this. But you subtract that and you end up with the height of that wall there. And then on the other side, right over here, you have top of wall minus bottom of wall will give you the height of this wall. And you do your measurements and you come up with your cubic footage. Okay. We'll go over that in more detail, but that's essentially what you're going to see. So you see a bunch of these walls here, and they're going to have bottom of wall is also where concrete sidewalk should be hitting it. All right. Sometimes they'll put bottom of footing, top of footing as well, and then your sidewalk lands on top of the bottom of your sidewalk lands on top of the top of your footing. So you have to be careful on how it stacks, and we'll go over that in much more detail on the job training. AR is what's AR? I can't remember that. Accessible route of travel. Okay, there you go. Or to say accessible or acceptable? No, accessible route of travel. All right. Then you just look at these and you make sure you read all the notes, check it all out. That's that. Your subs should be giving you pricing on that. You're just double checking. There's existing fire ring. There is uh, trees again. What else we got up here? So we look at our legends, look at our notes. Asphalt, concrete paving, replace slopes must not exceed 2%. That's just normal. But you got to know that you're replacing this, and there's the numbers. It's 55 feet by 0 inches by 30 feet 0 inches, and it's trapezoidal, parallelogram. And the detectable warning, so those are typically $250, but that can vary depending on where you're located at and what quality it is. So to find out about what particular brand they want, you have to look at the specifications for detectable warnings. All right, we'll go over that on OJT. Okay, keep on going down the line here. You can put this on pause anytime and take a break at your leisure. So construction runoff sites. So when you have trucks going in and out, you don't want rocks going onto the road and hitting people in the windshield because people get pissy and want you to pay for their windshield. And also, you don't want to keep cleaning up the road because it looks like crap if dirt from the tires get on the road. And it's a public place. It's supposed to be a nice playground. And if they've got to deal with dirt on their children, dirt everywhere, that's bad. So they typically have street sweepers come through all the time. But in order to minimize it, we make we call it riprap. It's just big chunks of rock and some geotex. These are quarry spalls here, 8-inch quarry spalls, but we call it riprap too. So riprap is recycled concrete that's in chunks, no rebar in it. So it makes your truck vibrate as you're leaving and entering the site. And then typically we have a little wash station there, so we wash off the truck. But it depends on how sensitive the area is. You don't want to create a bunch of problems when it comes to uh, water running into through the wattles down into the streams. So you got to be real careful. Shows you how the silt fence is going to look, and that's required. Shows you how to build them, all this stuff. I'm going into more detail here. This doesn't generally require the estimator to price all this out. There are some things that you do have to look at, but I'm going over it so that you understand what you're seeing. Okay. Flow and dispersible trench. All right. This is clean fines. Okay. It's rock. It's not concrete. It's rock. I know it looks square, but that's just dug out. It's just square for fun. And there you go. So you got a little drain box is what you built. A French drain. Okay, it talks about posts, signposts, and how they're supposed to be. And this here's concrete. This is rebar reinforcement. It's typically at the bottom of the pipe, though. It's not. It's really welded to the pipe, and it creates it makes it harder for it to get pulled out because you'd have to pull out the concrete plug if you're going to pull that out. So some yahoos want to be fun and take a chain, wrap it around that pipe, put it on the back of their tow hook, and go for a ride and see how many of these they can pull out in a night because, hey, what else is there to do? Right. So to make it more difficult, the concrete plug is 2 feet deep. It also has to be below the frost line. And you put these little rings so it can't slip out of the concrete. Okay, so the concrete comes with it. They're talking about payment pin. This is striping for the ADA. So what you see here is the ADA guy. It shows you how to build a template. Okay. These are the requirements by local code for this region. There you go. That's what that's about. It tells you what the signs are in your specification. It goes into greater detail on whether it needs reflective tape, et cetera, et cetera. The size and dimensions are also typically in there. All right, and on and on. So you're going to get a lot of practice looking at this stuff uh, when we're doing OJT stuff, and you're going to be asking questions, and that's exactly what you should be doing. It won't be this plan. It'll be a group of plans and specs that we're gonna we're gonna work with just one set of plans and specs, and we're gonna estimate the whole project, write all the notes, and really get into the nitty-gritty, answer all your questions while we're going through this whole process. Okay. But here's a landscaping L. See? And you have landscaping notes all down the line. All right. Now it starts to get pretty. We're starting to build some stuff. So this is the materials plan right there. It says it, you know. All right. Landscaping 1.1. When you write requests for information, you use those numbers. These are called bugs. I think they're called I can't remember what the hell they're called. I think they're called bugs. Anyway, it's the detail notification. So it says detail 4 on drawing L 3.2 shows what this is. Okay. And same here. L detail 1 on L 3.1 shows what that is. And so on and so on and so on. Okay. You're going to see stuff like this. EJ. And you can look up here and it's going to say expansion joint. Expansion joint is fabric that allows the concrete to, when it's curing and when the temperatures are changing, it lets the concrete squeeze something so it resists the concrete from splitting, from cracking, from spalling. All right. CJs can either mean construction joint. This one means contraction joint. So it's typically, and it's going to show you how they want you to cut it. It's either put in with a strip of plastic or it's cut in. More often it's cut in than not. It can also be tooled in. I actually like tooling better. Tool means a trowel. So your concrete finisher will trowel in. So everywhere you see this, an EJ, there's a couple ways to handle it. You got to know your crew. So your crew might say, wherever we put an EJ, we're going to pour this section, skip this section, pour this section, skip this section. Or if you have someone who's pretty savvy, they can, well, one of the ways I've seen it done is they will take a stud, a partial stud or an angle, like a corner bead is what we call it, where two drywall pieces come together at a corner and there's a piece of metal that goes up there. That's called a corner bead. I've seen it where they've taken corner bead and screwed the asphaltic expansion joint there, pinned it to the compacted soil below so that it's a nice straight line. And they'd come in, they'd pour concrete on either side of it, make sure it's nice and straight on both sides, all the way down. And then they'd come back and pour the rest of it and then finish it. So they could get this whole thing poured. I've also seen where the details are so, the architect is so wanting it to be absolutely perfect, that he'll specify um, skip placement. So that would be, you're putting a form here, pouring this one, skipping this one, a form here, pouring this one, or skipping that one, whichever. And you'll set up a skip placement pattern. And so on day two, you're pouring, you strip this form, put your expansion joint on it so it's nice and straight. And sometimes you put it, there's a cap on it that you can put in there so that you have, it's called a zip strip. It holds on top of your expansion joint and you can zip it out. Sometimes they don't like that. Some jurisdictions I've found that they don't want the zip strip. Some want you to leave it in because it's a white strip. Some want, but it's plastic. Some want you to zip it out and then fill it with like in colleges they want you to fill it with, well, Sikaflex is what we use mostly, but it's an expansion. It's a elastomeric product. Essentially keeps the water from getting down in there, that type of thing. So there's that. You got CJs. There's also an SJ. It's a score joint. So typically score joints, if they've got the CJs and the SJs, CJs are probably going to be tooled. SJs are scored, which are typically green cut concrete, maybe a 1/4 inch deep, but it really depends. So this is a radius. This is going to be a fun one for whoever's scoring it. You're going to be pretty much on your hands and knees, making sure that that cut is nice and pretty. And you want to do it when it's green. Not too green, but green. So, all right. It goes over all sorts of stuff. And so you'll do a constructability of this. So you're going to have some surveyors out there. So you got to price out surveyors. You got to price out carpenters that are going to do all this radius form work. You're going to price out concrete finishers. If there's rebar in this, usually not, but there might be some mesh in it or something else. Or it might be specialty concrete. In some cases, there might be permeable concrete, so water passes through. It doesn't seem like it in this case, but it's possible. So you have to look at the spec for that. You have to consider that as well. So there's a lot to consider, and you'll learn more of that in the JOT on the job, OJT on the job training. So here we go, the same type of thing, more of that. All right, landscape notes, layout. It's going to go all over more stuff, yada yada. All right, here's our so CL. What do they got for CL? So that's going to be center line. They haven't changed it. So CL center line. So there's a survey mark right there, and it's based on 90 off of that. So your survey guys are going to have lots of fun. So north, the northing is that number, the easting is that number. And yes, you'll have to pay for, and you may have to get a, oh, when you talk with your survey subcontractor, they'll probably use I think it's called All Station or something like that, but they'll give you a price to do it. They'll look at this and they'll go, oh, this is going to take some time. And they're going to give you probably 3 follow-ups to get your elevation, get your northing and eastings, to get your radiuses right. And they'll confirm that your form work is right if you ask them to. So you're the one who drives how much they're going to charge, and then they're going to charge you for every comeback. So that's why we got to be really good about looking at all these things. All right, here's some notes. from the engineer, and it was done. I don't know why they wrote it on here, but there it is. Cross slopes of the sidewalk shall not be steeper than 1 and 48, so 2%. Okay. So 1 inch and 48 inches or 4 feet. Okay. And it talks about this. So this is probably afterthought. Once made it to stamping, got stamped. Then someone stepped it in here before bidding, added these notes because this is now a bid document. And they want to make sure that everyone's bidding on the same stuff. More of the same. More of the same. Yep. There's some pretty stuff that shows you how they want some of this to work. There's a footing right here. There's a curb or a small wall. This is a seat, actually. Cast in place concrete seat wall. So you gotta, because it's a pitch like this, you gotta do different kind of form work that's more expensive, harder to put in. And it looks like they want chamfer. There it is, 1/2 inch chamfer on all exposed corners. So there you go. You can't use a tool there, so that's extra wood, extra uh, extra costs. Footing. I'm not exactly sure why that's FG. All your slabs are thickened edge. Good to know. And it does have rebar in there. So that's number 4 rebar. That's probably something like $1 a foot. You could figure that out. Look on the ask your local vendor. You can have your vendors price out all the rebar. And same with your concrete. So your vendors will be doing a whole lot of it. Here's a contraction joint. And they're allowing you to use a tool. So it's a 1/2 inch radius tool edged. Good. So when they're placing concrete, your finishes are there already. You're not paying any extra money for them to come out and do it. Whereas on a score joint, see where it says it's actually a score joint. Oh no, that's a tool joint. Sorry. Where's the score? Yeah, here's the polyethylene sealant on an expansion joint with a foam backer rod. Well, zip strip shoes can be used there, but you have to find out if they care whether or not you're using a zip strip or the foam backer. Foam backer is cheap, not that big of a deal, but zip strip goes in, keeps your stuff straight. So it's a faster process for the finishers. All right. And then we get to look at all this little fancy stuff. This is what they're going to cast into the concrete, right? I think that's what that is. Let's take a look. See. Footer represents only contractor to install deer hoof prints in the concrete. Okay. So tribal group. It's going to be pretty cool, actually. So interesting enough, here in Washington State, um, our natives, they are, how shall we say it? So I don't know about your Native Americans. I believe it's the same. Most of their language was not written down. It was passed down verbally. And here they're making a huge effort to take that verbal and convert it into written. And they're using typical, I forget exactly the name of it, but it's the same format that translators use to express accents and sounds. So this is supposed to be phonetic. Okay, so that will become the new writing of that word, and it's written in the phonetic language, and it's a standard language, so that if you're ever wanting to sound it out, it truly is a sound out. Okay, so And it's quite interesting how they're doing it. Takes a lot of work because, well, at least here, the natives are spending a lot of time trying to get that codified, written down, so it's there forever. And it's pretty cool. So these are people buy a couple bucks or, donate $500 and they get this little um, butterfly, or not butterfly, that's a dragonfly embedded into the concrete. All right, these plaques. So it's going to be cool. This particular project is. All right, and here's some product drawings to show what they're expecting to see. And this is typically from the manufacturer, so they got pictures of it, and then they put these models in it. And irrigation notes tells you who's going to control what, all that stuff. The legends, it goes into an irrigation map. So here's your irrigation plan, and we'll go over all that. Landscape, some details on how it's supposed to be done, sizes, sleeving, caps, controls, etc., etc. I don't expect you to know all this. This is just so that you are aware of what a drawing looks like. You'll spend a lot of time on these, getting your takeoffs and figuring out constructability and who's responsible for what subwise. So you go through there, and now it's going to talk about how you're going to plant the trees, the requirements for the trees. And that's this project. So this project is all outdoor work. If you were bidding it and there's no structures to it, this would be the end of it. It'd be a landscape job. Now, it's a government job, so generally speaking, and with the concrete, it could easily go to just a direct award to a landscape company. But very often, the landscape companies don't want to deal with the government paperwork and the hassle of it, getting it all set up. They want to get in there, do the job, get the hell out of there. And so they don't want to mess with the admin stuff. So there's so much additional upfront paperwork to get things started and to get the momentum going that it makes sense for a GC to be hired, even for something simple like this. I'm going to pull up a different plan and we'll go over buildings. Let's take a break though. I need to move around. So I was looking at this, I was thinking maybe we should take a break here. I'm going to set up for a different video and we're going to go over the architectural plans of a building. All right, so we've got the outside ones you just walk through. If we have any landscaping and general plans, we'll just rush through those real quick and not get into any details, but we're going to start focusing on structure and take a look at that. So that'll be in a separate video. All right, talk to you soon.